I want to welcome you to the expert breakout sessions for the Cloud Architecture Summit. This is the session for Actian, and let me welcome back Greg Coates, Director of Product Management for Actian's data integration offering. Greg, welcome.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Vance.
You know, we're really glad to have Greg with us this morning. He drives data and integration solutions for the enterprise with a focus on hybrid and cloud architectures. He has 20 years experience in data integration and data quality software and services. And notably, prior to Actian, Greg held leading positions for data integration companies, including Pervasive and Data Junction. And in today's session, Actian, Activate Your Data, Greg is going to talk to us about the trends going on in the digital transformation age. You know, many of us know companies need to innovate more rapidly to beat the competition, but what they're finding is the more they look to innovate, the more they often need to integrate. So to help unravel that puzzle, Greg is going to show us how Actian is helping enterprise tackle the challenges of bringing cloud architectures into the enterprise with an agile and intelligent platform approach. We're going to take a look at Actian Data Connect, which has a terrific range of technologies, including APIs, REST, microservices, containers, Kubernetes, and other open source projects. The result is that Actian removes many barriers and complexities to working with cloud and hybrid architectures and lets anyone integrate anything, anywhere, anytime. So just before I hand it to Greg, let me just remind you, you can download his slides. Let me recommend that you do. They're really a great collection of technology and big picture vision. And we've also got some great assets right under the view screen. Those are available for you. Just click any of the links below. They're available for you. You'll get the asset right away. No need to register. You did that to join us this morning. So with that, let me hand it to Greg. And Greg, tell us about Actian, Activate Your Data.
Okay, thanks again, Vance, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and hope to make this worthwhile for you. And today we're going to talk about Data Connect Hybrid Integration Platform, but before we dive into that, I'd like to give you a quick introduction to Actian in case you're not familiar with this. So Actian's mission is to deliver data management, integration, and analytics to power the shift in hybrid data computing. We have over 20 years experience in each of these disciplines, thousands of customers around the world, and operate independently under a joint partnership between HCL Technologies and Sumeru Equity Partners. We're a global company with global support and business models, have a host of patents, and continue to innovate. And some of those innovations include the first analytic database with vector processing, the first visual data integration mapping tool in Data Connect, the Zen Edge database that was purpose-built for IoT devices and edge applications, and then most recently, the Avalanche, the world's fastest Generation 3 cloud data warehouse. Those innovations are also currently represented in the Actian's portfolio and that focus on these three core areas. Connect, with Data Connect, we deliver data and application integration in the cloud or on-premise. Manage, with ActianX, Zen, and NoSQL, we provide best fit data management. And analytics, with Avalanche, to bring analytics on a Hadoop-enabled, fully hosted data warehouse as a service, and Vector, its on-premise counterpart. Now, let's key in on integration, and specifically Actian's Data Connect. Data Connect empowers anyone to integrate anything, anywhere, anytime. Now, that sounds a little grandiose, and obviously there are some practical considerations. So what do we really mean when we say that? Well, in today's world, traditional integration approaches are being stretched pretty thin. Custom code and point-to-point integrations can help plug holes, but they're tactical in nature. And businesses going through a digital transformation really need a strategic approach, so they should consider a hybrid platform to solve their diverse and mounting data and application integration challenges. They need versatility, and a versatile hybrid integration platform should support all four of these dimensions. User personas that span a spectrum from integration specialists to the occasional integration user, business and citizen integrators, even to digital integrators for automation. And when you empower more users within your organization to be self-sufficient, your people become more valuable, and your business doesn't have to wait in line for the IT backlog, which, if you're like us, let's be honest, that never really seems to happen. And in connectivity endpoints, they include a combination and mixture of everything on-premise, cloud, mobile, streaming, IoT devices. All of those need to be supported. And the number of apps and data sources in the world will only continue to proliferate, and a platform brings a consistent, methodical approach and can help you make proactive decisions as they do. In flexible deployment, refers to the same kind of problem. They also include any combination of cloud, on-premise, and embedded scenarios like you'd find with IT devices. And as we know, most companies are planning to or have already started moving their computing and networking resources to cloud environments. On the other hand, they'll also continue to have at least some resources on-premise. Having the flexibility to move between these boundaries will help contain costs and allow you to choose the right place for any given use case. And finally, you also want to support integration patterns and events like real-time application integration or data consistency, data migrations, B2B integrations, process automation, and even streaming data scenarios. And using a common platform for all of these use cases, it's useful in several respects. You get a common metadata layer, you get a common or holistic view of all your integrations. But in the same context, a repeatable and consistent approach also becomes a multiplier as the number of integration use cases grows within your organization. So when we say Data Connect is for anyone who wants to integrate anything, anywhere, anytime, we mean anyone like those specialists and the occasional user who can take advantage of pre-built templates and guided workflow wizards to design their integrations, and the operations or support personnel who can configure, run, and monitor them. And digital integrators can leverage a REST API to configure and execute pre-built integrations, but they can also leverage an SDK to dynamically design and execute them from end to end. And soon, citizen integrators and data scientists will be able to take advantage of a new simplified design interface that's on our roadmap. The first objective for that will be to enable these folks to extract data from any source, do some simple transformations, and then load it to a data warehouse or drop it onto a data lake. And Actian Universal Connect, it provides connectivity to anything with hundreds of out-of-the-box connectors, but we also have 2 SDKs for extending connectivity and building custom connectors, and even functionality as needed. We also have plans to create an open JDBC interface to provide yet another and arguably more familiar way for developers to build custom connectivity. And last, the authentication, runtime, and other management services can be deployed anywhere. And that means in the cloud or on-premise. And regardless of the location, they use the exact same API and user interface for a consistent experience in either area. And then by any time, we mean Data Connect supports all the typical integration patterns you would expect out of a hybrid integration platform. And it provides runtime on demand, scheduled, event-based, or real-time via its REST API or one of the other listener services that are available. So to help illustrate the versatile nature of the Data Connect platform, I want to spend a few minutes discussing the architecture here. And I think this is really where some of the power comes into. This diagram shows the available microservices in the leftmost box, and each of these have a component in the user interface as well as a set of associated REST API operations. You could effectively build your own user interface using the same API that we did. What this API layer does enables us a pluggable architecture that can adapt to best-of-breed advancements that are made in the respective open source technologies on the back end. And that second column represents the back-end components that we're currently using. And it shows the open standards and open source technologies that we've implemented using the Spring Boot app framework. Now, if you notice the dotted line around the lower section of that column, these components have been externalized to allow customization by swapping your own identity provider or job history and configuration databases, or even the messaging layer. And this gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility if you want to leverage your existing infrastructure to take advantage of or extend functionality or your governance practices that you already have in place. And the third column here represents the deployment technologies we use to manage Docker containers via Kubernetes and Helm charts on the cloud providers we do support. We currently run on Amazon and IBM clouds, and by the end of this quarter, we'll also be running on Microsoft Azure. Now, as I mentioned, Actian currently uses these technologies in our own data cloud control plane, where we host Integration Manager as an integration platform as a service. And that said, we can also provide recipes or Helm charts if you want to take full operational control of your own integration cloud and deploy it anywhere you like. And the bottom box there in that column really just represents 2 local installation packages, one for Windows and one for Linux. And these can be used to really quickly stand up instances of Integration Manager with a set of default configurations. Those default settings can also be modified so you have control over traditional installations like you would expect to. And then finally, the rightmost image illustrates either of the two deployment options, one on cloud or the other on-prem. And if I haven't already, I'll probably say this more than once, but they each expose the same set of microservices, provide the same GUI and the same REST API. So client code and users will have the same experience in either case. Now, before we move on, I just want to share a few examples of customer success stories that we've had of customers who have taken advantage of the Data Connect platform. One is IDP. They reduced their partner onboarding time pretty drastically and scale back the headcount of personnel to interface or integration ratios. And in a similar fashion, CPA Global used Data Connect as part of their central integration hub, and they too reduced the number of highly skilled integration specialists that were then freed up for other strategic pursuits. Hanover Re, they minimized the need for enterprise IT, and they automated a big part of the integration design phase. And what I found most interesting about their use case is that they built a set of transformation maps and workflows that automated the process of building new transformation maps and workflows. So they actually used the platform to help build new integrations automatically. And then HSS Hire is another good example. They built a whole solution that supported their stock availability requests and their quote processing for their web portal, and they use Data Connect at the heart of that for real-time integration to and from that web portal to their back office applications. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of a taste of what can be done. And then, so we've discussed some business reasons for using Data Connect. We looked at the architecture of Integration Manager. Now let's take a little bit closer look at how users interact with the platform. In a typical workflow, design users start by visually building process workflows and data maps by applying business rules, and they do things like standardize, enrich, validate, or any other number of transformations to the data. And after they modify and test in the design environment, they package the design artifacts up into a deployable archive file and upload it to a runtime environment. And then after the package has been uploaded, the user provides some final runtime configuration inputs. Examples of those inputs would be things like usernames and passwords, the kinds of things you don't want to hard code into the design, but you need to change quickly and frequently. They can also set up events that would automatically trigger the integration to run. And then finally, the design instructions and their associated configuration inputs are processed. So that's the workflow. The components or the interfaces that the user actually interacts with are the Studio IDE, or stands for Integrated Design Environment. And it's an interactive tool that allows you to immediately see the results of your work. And then templates, they're either prepackaged by us or they're user-defined portable deployment archive files that are essentially the output of those design sessions. And by the way, this isn't a compiled jar file like you would find in a Java app. And for all practical purposes, it's just a zip file that contains the design artifacts, which are JSON formatted text files. And those are passed to Integration Manager, which is this architecture slide we looked at just a few minutes ago. And Integration Manager provides that API, but to us humans, it's also a web app for configuring, scheduling, monitoring the jobs that are defined by those integration packages. And then ultimately, those are passed to and run by the runtime engine, which is the core of the Integration Manager's execution service and job management system and the distributed agent framework that it supports as well. And for what it's worth, the engine also has a Java execution SDK and a command line interface for even more tightly embedded use cases. So I'm going to do a double click here on Design Studio, and it'll be fast in the broader context because there's way too many things, features, and functionality to show you right now. So I'll just keep it to the basics and then include some recent enhancements. We chose this desktop developer app paradigm based on feedback we received from our customers and our install base. The sweet spot, if you will, for the Design Studio is an integration specialist or an ad hoc integrator, the kinds of users who are comfortable on projects like this. They're web developers, SQL users, scripters and such who want power and flexibility within their own local environments. And it's based on the Eclipse framework. So we also provide site plugins for programmers who use Eclipse and want even more control of their development environment. And at the time we chose this, we also planned to build a separate web design interface that's compatible with this one. So it made for an easy choice. The framework enables us to quickly add new functionality and bring features to market, but it also enables administrators in our customer base to leverage their current user management systems for network resources and integrate their own source control systems, both of which were big priorities for our customers. The design metadata repository is file system based and readily accessible. As I mentioned earlier, the metadata file format is in JSON, so it's human readable and machine readable and can be extended into other processes if need be. Some of the features added in the latest release include design templates or pre-built integration processes that we ship with the studio. We intend to add more to the collection over time and encourage our users to do the same. More than just samples, our goal with these templates is to provide useful functioning processes right out of the box that only need to be configured. However, they can then be modified and customized from the starting point as you see fit. And debugging was another common theme for requested enhancements. So we enabled the user to quickly set process steps up as breakpoints. Right-click interaction, and when they run the process in the design studio, it pauses at each of those steps and displays the values of variables and object properties that are being used. This eliminated just an enormous amount of scripting that our users had traditionally written themselves to do that sort of error handling and debugging to gather information and log it. Now it's all done for them. And then drag and drop functionality was extended to component usage. So now when you add a new step to the process canvas, you select the component you want to configure and have its inputs and outputs and their associated boilerplate scripting created automatically. This also eliminates a ton of scripting and helps to reduce user error. And finally, a mapping wizard guides new users through the complete process of selecting source and target connections and the field mapping between them. So we'll continue to improve on and add usability features like these in subsequent releases. So we talked quite a bit about Integration Manager earlier, so I won't go into too many more specifics here. I do want to stress some of the security aspects though. It uses OAuth 2 standard for authentication, and all the server communications can be encrypted using your SSL certificates. And then when data moves across the wire, the data that's in the transformation maps or being used by some of the process components, those are encrypted by TLS 1.2 where appropriate. And the agent framework that Integration Manager provides is designed to connect to data and run the engine behind the firewall near the data. So in that case, the data never actually leaves your environment. And the exchange of information between the agent and Integration Manager is really only metadata. That includes the deployment package, the job configuration, and the resulting log file. So ease of use within the Integration Manager comes from a couple places. There's a guided workflow that walks the user through each step when they initially configure an integration, but it also comes from the REST API. So being the REST is so pervasive now that it really makes client-side web apps easy to develop and interact with the integrations. So it makes for easy consumption of the web services. There's also a simple but powerful parent-child hierarchy of runtime templates and their configuration, and that really helps to promote reuse and allows easy propagation of updates. As for real-time, I may have mentioned this earlier, but every integration that's configured and set to active is automatically assigned a URL endpoint for use by web service clients. So it just comes for free. And then automatic notifications to alert you of job errors can be quickly enabled. This can be set up server-wide and or for specific integration jobs. And then you get high availability from adding worker nodes to the job request queue. Simple installation and config of those additional workers gives you engine scale out, higher availability to help processing loads. And it also provides destination support for job priority routing. And then lastly, I shouldn't fail to mention, you have governance over the integration environment because admin users have complete visibility and full control of user and group access to any given integration. So to summarize, this diagram shows just a sample of the connectivity options, user personas, and integration patterns supported. The Data Connect Studio is a lightweight desktop app that works with Git or other version control systems and leverages your normal network authentication. And it's used to create the integration designs. Then Data Connect Integration Manager is a runtime environment for those designs. It's fully hosted by Actian on our data cloud. It can be installed locally on Windows or Linux in minutes or deployed on any cloud platform using Kubernetes and Helm charts. And this slide depicts our hosted Actian Data Cloud integration platform as a service. But as mentioned, you can deploy those services locally into your own virtual private cloud as well. And both these design and management interfaces are easy to use and enable new and experienced users to get their integrations built and running quickly. The versatile nature of Data Connect's architecture just fits well within your existing environment. The overall flexibility and ease of use of the platform components provides a very short time to value while setting you up to migrate to or from the cloud as your business requirements change in the future. And one last item before I close, I do want to mention that the two themes on our short-term roadmap, the rest of this year and next, are about improving user experience in both these design environments and management environments. We'll also continue to enhance connectivity. The R&D teams have already made some great improvements that were just recently released and have more on the way for the end of this year. And then next year, we'll continue to build on those themes and are working towards a web app for doing quick data transformation mappings for business users and data scientists who want the ability to quickly extract data from any source and load it into a data sink or a data warehouse. So if you want to see demos or get a better idea of some of the capabilities we discussed, have a look at the integration platform playlist on our Actian YouTube channel. And with that, I'd like to say thanks again for your time, and please let us know if you have questions or found the presentation useful. So that concludes my presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to Vance to see if there are any questions that we can help answer.
Greg, thanks very much. A really great look both at the issues that are facing folks that are looking to adopt cloud, whether it's hybrid or fully end-to-end environment, as well as the architecture that makes Actian so helpful in those projects. Thanks very much for a great session.
Yep, thank you.
You know, Greg, it was a real whirlwind look at a number of different solutions that I think many of our attendees are working on right now, whether it's a full-blown 100% cloud migration or just to get into some sort of a hybrid environment between not simply SaaS integration, but many other areas for data warehouse, analytics, even B2B. I wonder if you could give us just a quick summary of where Actian is getting a lot of customer support for some of these big range of hybrid projects going on today.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. And maybe I'll start with kind of our traditional customer base, because that's really what gave rise to the platform and how it's evolved over time. And I mentioned early on that we had over 20 years experience within the different disciplines, one of which was integration. And a lot of that came from the typical ETL use cases, like data migration and data consistency from one system to the other. And so that's really kind of where our roots were. But that really grew fairly rapidly into supporting business to business scenarios. So we've had quite a bit of activity in the financial services and even the healthcare sectors they were really claims processors. It was a big part of it that we're exchanging EDI data, mapping and exchanging EDI data among external business partners. So we went from ETL with migration and data consistency to B2B, and then the SaaS application revolution came along. So we started quickly doing point-to-point integrations. Salesforce was one of our first partners, and this goes back about 10 years probably, where Data Cloud was really introduced, and they were a big partner of ours back then. That led really quickly to NetSuite, and now, more present day, we are working with ServiceNow and about to begin work on a Workday connector as well, as those two companies grow and grow. And then more close to home, data warehouse loading is huge for us. I mean, I mentioned Avalanche really briefly, and we still sell Data Connect as an independent standalone integration platform. It's very well suited to being a complement to Avalanche and the cloud data warehouse platform for loading. I mean, Data Connect has hundreds of connectors, and those connectors can read from any of those sources and rationalize the data into something that is structured and can be loaded into a data warehouse. I think I may have mentioned that earlier, or just into file formats that can be landed onto data lakes. And then even more presently, our Zen database is really getting some traction in the market right now, and it's used for more streaming environments. And we've introduced a streaming data framework as part of the Actian portfolio that we will certainly be taking advantage of as part of the integration platform as well.
Wow, Greg, excellent list. And I think it really puts into context many of the different roles that integration and data migration and awareness of end-to-end streams and connections really play when you move to a hybrid and a cloud architecture. Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Vance. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, we do, as a matter of fact. You know, a lot of folks in our world pay a lot of attention to the database connectivity issues. I know you mentioned either ODBC or JDBC. I got a question here. Could the speaker talk more about what the plans are for support for ODBC and JDBC, especially as we go from on-prem to cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ironically, we've had ODBC connectivity for just about forever in the lifetime of the product. But JDBC is really something that we've had kind of cursory support for. We just haven't had a whole lot of demand until recently. But now that a lot of the cloud databases support and in some cases prefer JDBC connectivity, we're going to add a JDBC connector to the out-of-the-box list. And then what we also want to do is just, instead of just providing that connector, we want to provide some kind of a shim or an interface that would allow other JDBC clients to connect to that connector and pass data in and out of Data Connect. And so we really think that's going to help expand the number of databases that we can connect to.
You know, Greg, another issue, you talked about the design time. A question comes in, who actually uses Actian most frequently? I noticed from the session that it appeared that Actian has a UI for both non-technical and also technical users.
Oh yeah, Vance, that's an important question too, I think, because the traditional integration scenarios that we've supported kind of lean towards the integration specialists or the power users. But now that we're playing more into the data science and data analytics realm, at least in as much as how Data Connect supports those use cases, that the Studio IDE, that's the desktop app, really that's for more of the power users, but the web-based designer that we want to build is really more suited towards the business user and even the data scientists who do want to do some data exploration, extract some data, do some simple transformation on it. And ultimately, they just need to land it into some kind of a data lake or data warehouse where they'll really start to use it for their analytics purposes. And so we'll continue to support the desktop studio because that's an important part of our install base. And we see that going forward. But at the same time, we want a new, more simplified IDE that supports these other users as well. And why I think that's important, and first I'll say that even though we'll have two design interfaces, the intent is still to support the same metadata and the same underlying transformation engine, so that we're not going to diverge in that regard, but we'll be able to support two different use cases and two different user personas more readily with the same platform.
You know, what's interesting about that, Greg, it sounds like by having two distinct IDEs that you're really going to not sacrifice any of the power at the back end to make it available to the folks that might not be that technical.
Yeah, that is the plan. That's exactly what we're shooting for, to be able to up-level that, but then still take advantage of the same processing power and intellectual property that we've acquired over the years. I'll even add one more to that too, if you don't mind, the kind of a robotic process in digital integration or digital integrators that you might want to dynamically create integrations and execute those on the fly. And we have an SDK that will enable that. It's not publicly available, but it's available to partners who request it now that we will work with initially before it gets more widespread use. But that I think will open up a lot more of the partner ecosystem and then provide much more automation and automated techniques that other UIs can take advantage of.
Excellent, excellent. Greg, I see we're just about out of time, and this has been a fantastic session. For folks that would like to learn more, I know we were a bit short today. We didn't get a chance to get a big demo or anything like that about some of these cool features. Is there a place that we could send folks that they could see Actian in action?
I think the easiest place for people to do some further investigation is to go to the Actian YouTube channel and look at the integration playlist in particular. There's a host of short demos and even some longer ones, but you can get a really good idea of what the other capabilities are and some of the things that we talked about today. And I'm not going to ask you to call one of our sales reps because I know you will once you take a look at some of those videos. You'll be ready to call, so you can just contact us at the information provided here within the presentation.
Excellent, excellent. And as a matter of fact, I've just been notified we have a link directly to that YouTube venue where all of the Actian demos or Actian in action are. And so we offer that to the attendees here this morning, as well as some other terrific download assets we've got. We've got a great collection of analyst reports, white papers, thanks to Greg's team. They're available to you right away. Do also some other great assessment of the technology as well as use cases, and those are available without any registration as well. So let me thank again Greg Coates, Director of Product Management for Actian's data integration offering, for a great session and also for a great Q&A. Greg's been great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vance. Thank you too.
And one last thing before we go is that so many things going on here at Actian. Here's a slide that'll take you to some other terrific Actian resources that we mentioned during the slide presentation as well as the Q&A. You download Greg's slides and these links will be live. Thanks again, everyone.